Hello and welcome back to the Premier League Years series here on FM22. We are advancing on to Season 8 of the Deep Dive Simulation, which will be the 2029-2030 season, as we will enter into a new decade for the first time in the save. As we have been doing in the past couple of videos, we're going to firstly take a look at the back end of last season as a little reminder. Manchester City got their second straight Premier League title. They have won all but two of the titles, the other two being won by Chelsea. So I think you can see the two clear runaway sides in this save. See Manchester United and Liverpool taking Champions League football. Sheffield United have actually become a regular top half team, it would seem, and got themselves a fifth place finish last year. So they will play European football for the first time. Spurs joining them in Europa League, whilst Leicester won the League Cup and came seventh. So they had two reasons for making the Europa Conference League. They'll be in that. We saw Arsenal have their worst finish in the save. Newcastle, one of their lowest finishes as well, as they miss Europe for the first time in a while. If we look to the bottom half of the table, we said goodbye to Blackburn and Derby, who were both newly promoted sides, and to Brighton, who were in their second season in the Premier League. So no real regulars going down in that case. But we can now take a look at what the Premier League looks like for this season and get an idea of who the three sides that have come up are. I think I can spot them. One is Crystal Palace making an immediate return to the top flight as they come second in the Championship. Jess Thorup, I think, came in during the relegation season when they finished bottom. Obviously, couldn't keep them up. It was a little late by the time he came in, but he gets Palace straight back again, and they have heavily yo-yoed. Was that 6 straight seasons of going down and then up again. So we'll see if Palace can actually solidify themselves like Bournemouth did last season. We also find Reading are back. So they've come instantly straight back up after 2 seasons in the Premier League, then a relegation. And again, the side that has finished 6th in the Championship has won the playoffs. That's 2 straight years that's happened after Derby did it the previous season. John Terry's still in charge of Reading, so he gets another go at the Premier League. If we have a look at the playoffs, Reading managed to beat Fulham 5-2 on aggregate in the semi-finals, and then beat Watford 3-0 in the playoff final. As I've mentioned, we haven't actually seen Watford at all in this save, which is very surprising to me. This is the closest we've come to seeing them, but they get absolutely battered by Reading. 2 goals from Matt Rawlings and a goal from Boulaye Dia see Reading return to the top flight after just 1 season away. So 2 sides instantly returning, and make that 3 out of 3, because Wolves have also instantly returned. This one's pretty unsurprising. They did only go down in 18th. It was a shock relegation. They bounced straight back by winning the Championship title. Tripasovsky still in charge of them as well. So they all retain their managers and they all come straight back up, which is always a little bit disappointing. I liked last season because we had Derby and it was their first time in 20 years. But this season we have 3 returning sides. The only other thing to cover is we know that Phil Neville was sacked by Everton at the conclusion of last season. He has been replaced by Gareth Southgate. We saw Southgate come in at Aston Villa, who I believe he played for Villa. He did. Played 6 years at Aston Villa, became their manager, did not do very well. Actually ended up heading off to Celtic after a year and a bit out of management, but now comes down from Scotland to manage Everton. We'll see how he gets on. Hopefully it's better than his time with Villa, as that was pretty tragic. We'll take a look at the season preview, and I was going to say, I imagine Manchester City will be the favourites for the title. They are, and once again, Chelsea are the team in behind. We see Liverpool and Man United predicted in behind there. We actually find Wolves predicted up in 11th, which is very high for a newly promoted side. But again, their relegation was such a surprise that their immediate bounce back means that they're predicted to stay up. Palace and Reading, the two sides predicted to go down, alongside Burnley and Norwich being rated as the other sides. This is despite Norwich having a pretty good year last year, actually. If we take a look at last season, yeah, Norwich finished 11th. So hopefully they don't do what Reading did when Reading finished sort of like 12th, 13th in their first season back and then went and got relegated the next season. Hopefully Norwich don't do that. Actually, something we haven't really done is look at the Media Dream 11 in recent times. So we're seeing Ederson is still in goal. He's now 35. You've got Trent at right back. Wesley Fofana gets in at centre back with Josko Gvardiol at left back. And a man that we covered in the last video, Chelsea signed Hirokazu Matsumoto in January from Wolfsburg for I think just under £90 million. This is potentially one of the best new gen players I've seen in FM22. He looks absolutely incredible. Will turn 22 pretty soon. He's definitely not a centre-back at 5'7", but he's like Kante, but super creative. 16 tackling, but 19 vision and 19 passing. This is a god-type player right here. So he just instantly goes into the Media Dream 11. We see a midfield of Chelsea and Manchester City players in Havertz, Camavinga, and then Man City-wise Foden and Chiesa. And then up front, Mbappe and Sesko. No Erling Haaland, despite being listed as the second best player in the league. Sesko has been ridiculous, so he deserves his place there. We may actually have to take a quick look at manager movements, because it would appear... Yes, I forgot about this. Yeah, Arsenal had an interim manager for the end of the season. They have appointed Jurgen Klopp, who actually, after I believe he was sacked by Manchester City at the end of the 25-26 season, which was one of Chelsea's title wins. He went on to become Germany's manager for a couple of years, and then Barcelona for one season. And now he comes back to the Premier League with an Arsenal side that barely finished top half last year. So this is going to be a very intriguing season for Arsenal to see how they get on. Now under Jurgen Klopp. One other thing we can do at this point is have a look at any really early transfers that have gone down in this transfer window. Obviously, we saw the Matsumoto one back in January. The biggest transfer so far of this summer is a very interesting player. A very nice £69 million. Manchester United bringing in Yusufa Moukoko, who is still only 24 years old. Look how good Moukoko looks. If we look at his statistics for Dortmund, he's not really played, which is quite interesting, given how early Haaland left, that Moukoko was not the one to step in. He actually even took in a loan spell in the second tier in the 23-24 season with VfL Bochum. Did score 16 times. This is very intriguing that he really hasn't come through at Dortmund. Man United have listed him as a regular starter, so he expects to be playing. It's a 4-year contract. Let's see how Moukoko gets on. Alexander Isak didn't really quite work out as well as Man United would have hoped. Moukoko is the new man. We'll see how he works out. We find the next biggest move is Manchester United selling their goalkeeper. Andre Onana has gone to Newcastle. That is a very surprising move, considering Ergutan Shakir is still here, has been a really good player for Newcastle through the year. Look how good he's been for them. We saw his relatively okay season at Leeds. Newcastle did the big money transfer early on in the save. And he's been really good for them, especially these last 3 seasons, or especially the 26-27 season. I believe he ended up drawing for most clean sheets in the league. But they've decided that they're going to move on to Andre Onana, which now poses the question, who is Manchester United's goalkeeper? At the moment, we did know about Joshua Le Carpentier, the young French new-gen keeper who has played bit part when Onana's not been available. Will Manchester United also have to now go out and spend some good money on a new goalkeeper? That's a very interesting move. I did wonder if, as we got further into this, the transfer windows would get a little bit less interesting because we wouldn't know who the players were. It's not happened yet. Things are still very intriguing. The next biggest transfer is Newcastle again, over £40 million to Burnley for Dwight McNeil, who only just leaves, age 29, turns 30 this year. I've seen Dwight McNeil leave Burnley much earlier on in saves, so it's interesting how long he stayed around. Obviously, Burnley have been a Premier League side the whole time. Over 350 appearances for Burnley. He's been pretty good. He's had the occasional sort of drop-off season. He did miss quite a lot of games in the 26-27 season, didn't perform very well there, but did pick it back up again. Newcastle missed European football last time out, so they quite clearly want to get back in. Man United again. It's Manchester United and Newcastle, isn't it? Man United trying to catch up to Chelsea and Man City. Newcastle trying to get back in European football. Florentino Luis, who has spent the whole time at Benfica, another player who I've seen move on a lot earlier than this, has been pretty good for Benfica. It took him a while to get going. So it really took until the 25-26 season. I think that's why this move has come so much later. He didn't really get going, but he's now at Old Trafford, so Man United and Newcastle covering the biggest transfers of the window. We do find Tommaso Pobega, who was playing for Newcastle, is actually heading to Arsenal. He's been at Newcastle for 3 seasons. Again, sort of a little, I was going to say a bit of a slow start. He wasn't bad in his first season, but he has picked it up since then, including an 8-assist season a couple years ago. He now comes in to Arsenal, who are now managed by Klopp, as mentioned before. That could be quite an interesting one. And we'll scroll down one more page for now. I think I can only actually see one more transfer that we can actually look at. And that is, if I can find him again, Ben Godfrey, finally leaving Everton. Obviously, Everton have struggled quite a lot in this save. Played exactly 300 Premier League games for the Toffees, but now moves on to Spurs, age 31. Spurs are in the Europa League this year, so they certainly do need some more depth. Is viewed as a regular starter, though. I don't think it will be for too long. They have given him a 3-year deal. But I would imagine that Spurs would want to go a little bit younger when they can. I will go a tiny bit further down. We're still over 10 million at the moment. We see Southampton bringing in Maradishvili from Arsenal. He is a Russian midfielder. Can we see anyone else? Yes, we can. Again, Sheffield United bringing in an experienced player. We saw them do this a few seasons ago when they brought in the likes of Marco Verratti and did they bring in Julian Draxler as well? They brought in a couple of experienced players. They turned to Nicolas Sula this time for just over £10 million. Was becoming a bit part player at Dortmund as they moved on from him. Actually interesting that he went from Bayern to Dortmund on a free transfer. I don't know if that's set up in real life or if that was the game doing that. That's quite an interesting one. He went off to Dortmund. I actually Dane Scarlett leaving Spurs. Obviously, quite a highly touted prospect at Tottenham. It's not worked out for him. Only 32 Premier League appearances. Has netted 7 times. Actually took in a loan spell with Brighton in the Championship. But again, hardly played there. Bournemouth are going to give him a shot at becoming a Premier League forward. And he is considered a regular starter. So let's see how Dane Scarlett gets on. Can play centre-back. Don't know why. Just can. We find Leicester selling a player to the Championship. Fulham's still down there. So we can kind of ignore that one. Southampton. Bringing in Dennis Zakaria. So some experience going to St Mary's. So Dennis Zakaria, a very good player. So he has now aged a little bit further. Now he's in his 30s. But was still playing solid football for Feyenoord in the Dutch League, which we've seen players come to the Premier League from the Dutch League and struggle, but they've not had that same experience as Dennis Zakaria. West Ham's biggest transfer so far is Christian Volpato, a 25-year-old Italian attacking midfielder from Ajax. We saw that West Ham sold Nikola Vlasic, I think, in January of last season. So Volpato is quite a clear replacement for Nikola Vlasic. Quite a cheap one as well at just £9 million. So that's quite a good move, really. Well, let's try and find 1 or 2 more summer transfers that are early on in the window. Sheffield United here again, bringing in Oscar Gill. No, it's not the ex... I remember there being a Gill that used to play for Aston Villa, but he wasn't a right back. But again, experience being brought into Sheffield United. They know that they have to try and have a big enough squad to compete in Europe and in the Premier League to keep themselves safe. So they've got a lot of work to do. We'll get one more early transfer window move if we can find one. We find Leicester's biggest transfer of the window is quite a small little move for 30-year-old Italian left-back Gianluca Frabotta, coming in from FC Lorient in France, where he's been okay. I'd imagine this is just a rotation player. Indeed it is. Again, Leicester have European football this season, so depth is going to be key for them. But outside of that, we've covered our June section. We will come back in September, where the summer transfer window will have closed, and we'll get a proper look into how it goes down. And we'll see sort of the first 3 Premier League games of the season. We get the European group stages drawn. And there's something else. It's the FA Community Shield. I'll actually remember to show that this time. We've simulated forward to the start of September. The summer transfer window has closed. And as mentioned, we're going to start with the FA Community Shield. And Manchester City win it once again. I think this might be the 5th time that they've won the Community Shield in this save so far. It's either 4th or 5th. They beat Liverpool, who were the FA Cup winners of last season. Harvey Elliott actually gave Liverpool the lead. There we go. But Erling Haaland with a penalty for the equaliser. And a new-gen player actually scoring the winner. 23-year-old Ed Hewison, who has only made 12 Premier League appearances for Manchester City and is actually currently in the under-23s with no plans for him whatsoever. But he did just score a cup-winning goal, albeit in the Community Shield. But there's Manchester City picking up the first piece of silverware of the season. Having had no English representation in the Europa Conference League last season, we do make a return to it this year with Leicester City. You can see at the top there, if you are interested, the holders of the Europa Conference League are Marseille, so they won it last year. Leicester have been drawn into Group D with a Montenegrin side in Budućnost Podgorica. They have Apoel Nicosia of Cyprus and Vålerenga from Norway. It's a group that I see Leicester should really sweep it 6 for 6. I think they'll finish top. Whether they win every game, I don't know. Let's have Vålerenga for second, because I know that Norway does get some decent regens, or new gens rather. So I'm going to say them for second. Let's put Apoel third and Buduknost in fourth. Europa League next, and it is Spurs and Sheffield United that will be representing England in this competition. Spurs have been drawn into Group C alongside OGC Nice, Udinese and CSKA Moscow. Honestly, that's a pretty tricky group for the Europa League. At Udinese, it's interesting to see them making a European competition. I think they may struggle a little bit. Nice, we've seen them playing in the Champions League a good few times. And CSKA Moscow, haven't actually come across them too much in this save. But I think Spurs will get through, and I think they will still top the group. I'm going to put Nice for second, Moscow third, and Udinese will come bottom of that one, in my opinion. Sheffield United, we do have to go a little bit further down. We find Group F for them. And it's also a pretty tricky group containing Wolfsburg and Sporting Braga, along with Legia Warsaw as well. I think Sheffield United may well come third. I think this is how the group is going to look. Wolfsburg, we know how much money they made from selling that Japanese defensive midfielder to Chelsea. They got around 90 million for that move. So if they've used that money wisely, I think they could be a really strong side in this season's Europa League. Braga, Portugal, obviously one of the bigger nations for football. Braga not necessarily the biggest side in Portugal, but I think they'll still pose a big enough threat. Sheffield United, their first time in Europe. I think it may not even be a bad thing playing Conference League if they happen to come third. And then advancing on to the Champions League, the regular four representatives this time. Manchester United drawn into Group A alongside Benfica, Borussia Mönchengladbach, and Nîmes of France. I don't know how this has happened, but Nîmes came third in Ligue 1 last season and will make their Champions League debut. Well done to them. That's an incredible effort to get top three in France. I think Manchester United will top this group, and I think Benfica... Actually, I'm just going with the order it's listed in again. I feel like I do that quite a lot, but I think Man United top it, Benfica in second. Well done to Nîmes for making it, but I think they will probably be the side that gets beaten on a little bit. We go down a little bit further, we find Group D, which contains Chelsea, the holders of the Champions League. And thank goodness they haven't got Juventus in their group. In fact, Juventus aren't in the Champions League at all. So I don't know what's gone on there, but Chelsea do still have Real Madrid in their group, alongside Galatasaray and Zenit. It's going to be a tough one, but I think Chelsea will top it just ahead of Real Madrid. And again, actually, I'm just going to leave that order as it's listed currently. I think Galatasaray can sneak into third. I believe they made the last 16 last year. So I'm going to say Galatasaray for third. Go down one more group to Group E, which is Liverpool's group. They have a tough draw in Inter Milan, but then also a group with Sparta Prague and FC Copenhagen. I think Liverpool and Inter will be battling for the top two positions. Just to be a little bit different, I think I'm going to say Inter Milan to top the group, Liverpool to come second. Let's say Copenhagen for third and Sparta Prague for fourth. And finally, for the English representation, we get down to Group H. Manchester City have Porto, Borussia Dortmund, and BSC Young Boys. It is quite a difficult group, actually, with Porto and Dortmund in there. But again, I'm going to say Manchester City to top it. We'll go Dortmund for second, Porto third, and Young Boys to finish last. And with all that covered, we make our way back to the Premier League. And with the summer transfer window now being closed, we can take a proper look at everything that has gone down. And it's a lot of ins if we're looking at the list. There are a lot of players coming in. The biggest transfer of the window is actually a tie, because Moukoko was £69 million. Callum Hudson-Odoi is also £69 million, and it's to Newcastle. He was playing his football in France with PSG, still only 28 years of age, does turn 29 in a couple of months' time, but returns to his homeland, but up north with Newcastle. We'll see how Hudson-Odoi can get on. Listed as an important player. Hasn't really done too much in his first 3 games of the season, but hopefully he can settle in there and have a good year. We actually see Conor Gallagher making a very interesting move between the 2 Premier League title contenders. He moves from Stamford Bridge to the Etihad for just over £60 million. He is now 29 years of age, did put in just over 200 Premier League appearances for Chelsea, without ever really being amazing. And he was starting to play less and less, but makes a move to Manchester City, where I imagine he'll just be a depth piece, yeah. So he's gone from depth at Chelsea to depth at Manchester City. We go one further down. Chelsea buying Leicester players is continuing. They bought Wesley Fofana either a season or 2 ago, and this time it's left back Luke Thomas, who actually just under 150 Premier League games for Leicester. Didn't really solidify himself as the starter. But still gets a pretty big move to Chelsea, where he is considered the starting left back, which is interesting. Okay, does have 1 senior cap for England as well. Chelsea also bringing in Anatoly Trubin, who is now their first choice keeper. Edouard Mendy is done. In fact, Edouard Mendy might have retired. So it turns out Edouard Mendy hasn't retired. Newcastle have bought him. And I am very confused, because that means we know that Newcastle bought Andre Onana as well. So Newcastle have Onana, Sakir, and Mendy. Mendy's unregistered and transfer listed after they literally just bought him. Some Football Manager things I will never, ever understand. But Onana is the first choice keeper. But going back to Trubin, yes, he is now the starting goalkeeper after Chelsea managed to sell off Edouard Mendy. He comes in from Shakhtar Donetsk, obviously the very long time Donetsk goalkeeper. Came through in 2014, stayed there till 2029, a whole 15 years with the Ukrainian side. Now makes his big move to the Premier League. Has started pretty well, to be fair, in his first 3 games. Conceded 4, hasn't actually kept a clean sheet, which obviously you like to keep those, but he's not conceded an insane amount either, and he's averaging over a 7, so not too bad from Anatoly Trubin. We find Liverpool's biggest transfer of the window is a new-gen central midfielder, a Peruvian midfielder, which is quite interesting. Pedro Pretel, as mentioned, coming in from Roma, just under £50 million, had a pretty breakout season last year with Roma. Has come in from Union Hural and has started pretty well. Hasn't put up any statistics as such, but is averaging a pretty good rating there. We find Arsenal's biggest move is this is a player that people will be familiar with, Maxence Lacroix, the 6'3", pretty darn fast centre-back. You see that 18 pace right there. That is a very fast man. Is now 29 years of age. Comes in from a long-time stint at AS Monaco. £46.5 million. Hasn't started very well, but I think that is quite a good signing for the next few seasons. We find Sheffield United's biggest transfer is Mark. Hi, Mark. Manchester City player, formerly, actually came through at Manchester City as a Spanish midfielder, which is quite interesting. Didn't play a whole lot, has kind of been a rotation sub option. Hasn't played very well either, though he's probably not got the game time. 44.5 million is a lot, though, Sheffield United. That is a very risky transfer. He is only 23. I do feel like that is quite a big risk there. We find the biggest transfer out is Aston Villa selling Marco Canna to PSG. So they lose a defender there. Wolves back on the big transfers. Obviously, Brighton were relegated last season. They see 3 players leave to return to the Premier League in Jakub Moder, Facundo Torres and Sergio Carrera, with Torres heading to Villa, Moder heading to Wolves, and Carrera heading to West Ham. So Brighton making a lot of money again to rebuild in the Championship and try to get back to the top flight. We actually do find Nîmes making a very interesting transfer in Mohamed Diomande. So they've got some money. I wonder if that's what's happened, potentially. Manchester City have brought in Rainy Brainberg from Celtic for £28.5 million as a squad player left back. Did notice him on the bench, actually, in the Community Shield final. We'll have a look and see some other sides. We find Leicester's biggest move is 23-year-old forward Andrew Priest coming in from Manchester City. £27.5 million on him. Got 11 goals in the Championship last season with Wolves. So he has got a little bit of playing experience, though not at the top flight. Did also get 12 with Watford, actually, 3 years ago. So we know he can score. He just hasn't done a whole lot of it so far. But he's played 3 times and got 1 assist. Pretty good average rating, though. Hasn't opened his account yet for Leicester. We'll see how Andrew Priest gets on. Everton's biggest move is Joris Chotard, a French defensive midfielder coming in from Bayer Leverkusen, where he's been decent. I don't know whether these are injuries or he was only seen as a squad player with Bayer Leverkusen. Did start 16 of those 18 games. So when he has played, he has started. Seen as depth for Everton. Which again, for a side that's been honestly down the bottom a lot in this save, that feels like quite a big amount of money. Norwich make an interesting move. We've seen Matvei Safonov quite a lot in this save, where he's been a rotation keeper for Spurs. He was meant to be Hugo Lloris's replacement quite early on, and it didn't really pan out. He actually had a decent 24-25 season and then got replaced by Alvaro Fernandez, and has now become the goalkeeper at Norwich, where, yeah, he will be the starting goalkeeper. They literally just got him on near deadline day. Crystal Palace's biggest move on their return to the Premier League is Cade Gordon. This is, yeah, we saw him last season, didn't we, on his move to Fulham. He makes a slightly bigger move to Crystal Palace. So he now gets Premier League football. Did make the occasional appearances for Liverpool, but this will be his first proper shot at the Premier League. Does have a goal already, which is good. We go a little bit further down, we find Reading's biggest transfer is over £20 million. Liel Abada, an Israeli forward/winger coming in from Celtic. Can we find any other teams? Sheffield United with a couple more moves on David Carmo and Omar Richards. Reading with another move on... Oh, Kelleher, actually. Kelleher coming in. There's a player exchange. Tom Davis going the other way. Okay. That's quite an interesting one. What else we got? Wolves bringing in Hayden Roberts. Spent time at Blackburn and Millwall within the save. Noah Masengo is back again. He keeps getting signed, getting relegated, getting signed by another new Premier League side. Reading actually making a few transfers. Keaton Parks coming in from relegated Blackburn. Bournemouth making a move for Thiago Maia, a now 32-year-old Brazilian midfielder. Bournemouth are still in the Premier League, going into their second season. Ainsley Maitland-Niles and Lewis Travis being Burnley's biggest signings of the window there. See if we can find anyone else. I think we've kind of exhausted everyone at this point. Yeah, I think we've seen every team. Wolves bringing in an aging Ivan Toney, 33 years old. We'll see how he gets on. He has had a couple of decent seasons with Brentford when they've been in the Premier League. Nothing to stand out, though. Che Adams to Burnley as well. But what we can do now is take a look at the Premier League table 3 games in. And it's kind of unsurprising as we see Manchester City and Chelsea 3 for 3, first and second in the table, though Liverpool are also 3 for 3. So they've gotten off to a much better start, including a win at Arsenal, which is a pretty good victory. Although Arsenal, their first 3 games under Jurgen Klopp, not gone well. 2 home defeats, though they were to Manchester City and Liverpool. An away draw at Molineux to Wolves. And that's Wolves' only drop points. They've beaten Bournemouth and Villa. So could we see Wolves on a very impressive bounce-back season to the top flight? We see Crystal Palace up in 6th. This is their first season back. Although this wins over West Ham and Reading, which aren't all that impressive. But they're games that they have to win in order to stay up. So Wolves and Palace off to great starts. We look at the bottom of the table, the 3 sides with no points so far. Reading and Burnley. I mean, Burnley's slightly surprising because I feel like the past couple seasons they've been a little bit better. They've lost to Spurs, Southampton and Leicester. Reading losing to Everton, Palace and Spurs. Could we see Reading go straight back down? It's seeming like the potential outcome. But Aston Villa is the surprising team so far. Losses to Sheffield United, Leeds and Wolves have got them off to a 0-point start. Obviously, Arsenal being on 1 is a big surprise. Newcastle have already lost twice, though one of those is to Manchester City. So we're seeing some sides quite far down, some sides punching above their weight in Wolves and Crystal Palace, but as mentioned, we are only 3 games in. We see Vinicius Jr., by the way, 6 goals in his first 3 games of the season is extremely impressive. That is the standout stat. But what we're going to do now, we're going to simulate forward to November. We'll be about 10 games into the Premier League season, but it's where we will get our first look at the team and player stats so far for this year. We arrived back in the simulation on the 1st of November. We're actually only 6 games further in rather than the 7 that we normally are. But we'll take a look at the table. Anyway, it is Manchester City and Chelsea once again running away at the top, already 6 points clear of Liverpool. And then it's actually Spurs in 4th. So they're making a slight return to competing for Champions League football early on. Man City just the 1 loss. That actually came at Stamford Bridge. A big 4-1 win for Chelsea. But they've lost somewhere along the way as well. They actually lost at St James's Park to Newcastle, who have recovered their way back up to 8th. Arsenal have recovered as well. They are into 10th. We see the surprise team so far this season, Southampton. 5 wins from their first 9 games, including a win at the Emirates. 2-1 over Arsenal there. And only 1 point off Champions League spots right now. Although actually the table's reasonably close down to West Ham actually in 9th. So nice to see them getting off to a much better start than we've seen pretty much any time in this save. We haven't seen a lot of West Ham. They did go down at one point, I believe. Did West Ham go down at one point? Yes, they did. The 24-25 season, we saw them get relegated. They are starting to work their way back. Actually under Graham Potter, which I'd forgotten about that. He's been there a little while now. Good to see him doing well there. Southampton under Vejko Paunovic now. They are in their 5th season, actually. So Southampton have been back for longer than I thought they had been. I'm getting to the point where I'm getting decently far into this simulation, and I'm starting to forget how long teams have been here. But Southampton finally making a push towards the top half of the table. If we look at the bottom again, Villa are still in there with only 2 wins. Those coming at home against Palace and Leicester. 7 defeats on the season, including a loss at Burnley. There are still some pretty big teams in there, so I think they may have a relatively easier second quarter of the season. So I think Villa may be able to pull themselves out. We see Norwich and Reading down here as well. But they're actually also on 6. And really, you can get to Wolves in 11th and say that they're all sort of bottom half the relegation spots are not that far away. So not a whole lot's been sorted. I feel like the league is a lot closer than it has been. And that's just because Man City and Chelsea are running away with it. So everyone else just looks closer. What we can do with the November stop-off is we're going to look at some statistics. Only brief with the team stats. Actually, two sides have scored 24 goals in the first 9 games. Chelsea and Manchester City just taking the league apart. They're still very much on the destruction path in English football. Least goals is, well, unsurprisingly, Norwich and Reading with just 7. They are the bottom 2. If we look to conceded, we actually find 4 teams conceding 9 goals, and it's Liverpool, Manchester City, Newcastle, and West Ham. So West Ham riding on their defence right now to have them up in 9th in the table. Most goals conceded. Bournemouth have actually conceded 20 in their first 9 games, but are outside the relegation zone. Just Burnley 17. They're also just outside the relegation zone. And now heading into the player statistics. Your eyes don't deceive you. Romelu Lukaku is back again. I don't know how, but he is. 36 years of age. He's got 9 goals in 8 games. Lukaku just doesn't know when he's beat. He is back. Vinicius actually hasn't scored in the last 6 games. He has 6 in 8. And Erling Haaland is now level with him on 6, alongside Martin Satriano, who is here once again for Sheffield United. He has been absolutely brilliant in this save for them. Just 80 Premier League appearances and 46 goals. They got him for so cheap as well. £8.5 million for a man who has scored 20 in his previous 2 seasons in the Premier League. Unbelievable signing from Sheffield United on their part there. You see Dane Scarlett, who we knew made a move to Bournemouth. He's got 4 in just 2 starts and 4 substitute appearances. What a start from Dane Scarlett. You see Usam Sarawi turning from provider to goal scorer. He's got 4 and he's only started 1 game. So Jeremy Pino in there, Harvey Elliott, Phil Foden. Benjamin Sesko just the 4 in his first 9, actually being outscored by Erling Haaland and level with Pino and Foden. So they're sharing them out a little bit more. Liam Delap has 3 in 8 substitute appearances as well. See, James Malama is back here again, a player we noticed last season for Southampton. And Dwight McNeil has 3 in his first season as a Newcastle player. We drop down to assists. We actually lead with a Southampton player in somebody I think I mentioned when he was signed. Maybe. 9.5 million isn't a big sum of money, but I think I mentioned Elias Solberg. Actually got 7 goals and 8 assists last season, which is pretty impressive. They started off this year with 2 goals and 6 assists already in just 9 games. So Elias Solberg proving to be another Norwegian starlet here. Kai Havertz and Phil Foden are there on 4. Quite a few guys on 3 as well, as we see the likes of Lewis Cook returning to the Premier League with Crystal Palace. We see Anthony in what is his 2nd season with Newcastle. Yes, he's up there as well. We've got Camavinga, Harry Kane still going, Bernardo Silva going strong as well. Kyle Walker-Peters still going strong for Wolves. And Didi in there as well. William Carvalho at 37 years old playing for Wolves. He's got a couple of assists on there as well. We look to key passes. We find someone that we really haven't spoken about in this save, which has surprised me. I remember mentioning this with Gabriel Martinelli as well. We've only mentioned him like once. Emil Smith-Rowe, most key passes in the league so far at 22. He's really just not been mentioned. And it's not because he hasn't been good. Since kind of 2024, he's been playing really well for Arsenal. But he's just never had a standout statistic that he would really appear in any of these lists. If we look a little further down, we actually see Daniel Jefferson turning more provider than the goal scorer that he's been for the past few seasons. Hugo Felix is up here. Maxence Kakare is there again as well. We saw him last season. Chances created is actually a tie between Ruben Neves and Kylian Mbappe. So again, Mbappe turning more of a provider than a goal scorer. Actually, Ryan Kent in here. Omar Richards, newly signed by Sheffield United as well. Nicholas Seawold, a player that I think was signed quite a long time ago. Yeah, West Ham brought him into the league and then Leeds picked him up. He's just played his 100th Premier League game for Leeds, which is quite nice. We can go down a little bit further. We find dribbles made is a tie between Christian Volpato, who is the Vlasic replacement at West Ham for this season, and Trent Alexander-Arnold still going strong, aged 31. That's when you know you're getting into a save. Alexander-Arnold, 31 years of age. You see Daniel Jefferson, the most fouled player, and Volpato, the most dribbles per 90. Let's get into the defensive statistics. Tackles won, Ryan Sessegnon. Actually, his teammate in behind, Renan, is there as well. And then Ndidi and Mbappe there again. Kylian Mbappe's tackling stats. He has 5 tackling. And yet this is a good, 4th season where he's been top 3 in tackles won. That I cannot understand. We see Chelsea's new left-back Luke Thomas with the most tackles per 90. Key tackles, Kevin Alvarez is here again. He really loves being in these statistics. See Sebastian Bornau and Carl Walker-Peters tied for 2nd in there as well for you guys with 3 key tackles. Boubacar Kamara still at Spurs, someone we haven't mentioned for quite a few years. David Carmo, a new Sheffield United signing, as we see him in there. 3 guys on most interceptions made are Trent Alexander-Arnold, Meliero Bogard is here again, and then Dean Green, which is an absolutely brilliant name. New Everton left-back. They've just bought him from Fulham for 18.25 million. So that is a transfer that we would have scrolled past, but I didn't take note of it because it wasn't Everton's biggest move. But Dean Green tied for most interceptions in the league. We see Tim Eaves is here as well, another player that we spoke about last season. We go down to, we find things like clearances. Tom McIntyre's back here. He's now an Everton player. Find Axel Disasi is back in the Premier League with Reading as well. We look to conceded for goalkeepers now. Andre Onana just the 7 conceded in his first 8 games as a Newcastle player. Mavis Safanov's only conceded 8 in his first 7 games as a Norwich player. So 2 goalkeepers who have made moves between Premier League clubs have actually gotten off to pretty good starts. And we also see who Manchester United's new goalkeeper is, and it's Ivan Provedel, 35-year-old Italian goalkeeper that they managed to get for £700,000 actually last season. I think he may have been a January transfer. Maybe they knew. Maybe they were aware that Onana was going to leave. So they brought him in just to cover him for a season whilst the Carpentier develops. It's quite an interesting one. We see Etienne Green, a very interesting goalkeeper, currently playing for Saint-Étienne in France, I believe, in real life. But a highly touted goalkeeper, now in goal for Wolves. So that's quite a fun one. Livakovic doing well for Southampton. If we look into clean sheets, we actually have 3 goalkeepers tied. No, we don't. We have 5. We have 5 tied on 3. Sorry, I read that as 3 tied on 5. So not all that many clean sheets going in the Premier League then. Well, they're all very shared out. We see Onana there, new Newcastle keeper, Provedel, new Manchester United keeper, and then common names in Areola Ramsdale and Ederson, all still very much where they started, all on 3. The Golden Glove is up for grabs. And the final thing we're going to look at is the XG prevented. Surprisingly, it's Mads Hermansen, the Crystal Palace keeper, who last season, or the last couple seasons, no, must have been last season. No, they weren't a Premier League club last season, it was 2 seasons ago, was always at the bottom of the list. And now he's at the very top of it. So that's quite interesting to see Hermansen turning it around so much in the space of a year and a half. Anana there as well, Allison and Ederson, and David Raya still in goal for Villa. If we look to the bottom end, Josh Griffiths is having a shocker. Has he played every game and been that bad? Yes. Yes, he has. Bournemouth, you might need a new keeper. Keller has had a bit of a bad time. The goalkeepers have not been having a great time, have they? Nobody's really standing out, and there's not a whole lot of clean sheets. So it seems that it's quite a high-scoring Premier League season so far. But that's where we stand in November. It's very much looking like a Manchester City-Chelsea title race once again. We're going to go forward to the start of January now, where we'll be roughly halfway through the Premier League season. We'll get to take a look at the European group stages and how they panned out. And then, obviously, the window will open, but we won't have any transfers by then. We've now gone forward to the 1st of January. We're into a new decade. Welcome to the 2030s. We're going to start off by looking at how the European group stages have gone down. We start with the Europa Conference League. Leicester do indeed finish top of their group. They do actually drop points. They had a draw at Valerenga. Valerenga are the other team to go through, so it's not the worst result at all. But they top the group by 6 points. They head straight through to the last 16 stage, so no need to look for a fixture for them yet. Europa League-wise, we start with Group C, which was Tottenham's group. They go undefeated, though 3 of those games were draws, but they do still top the group by a very narrow margin, just the 1 point over Udinese. 3 draws. They actually drew with Udinese twice and had a draw at CSKA Moscow. Does mean 2 wins over OGC Nice, which is pretty impressive. They were only 3 points ahead of Nice, though. So it wasn't the most convincing of performances from Spurs, but they will go straight through to the last 16 stage. Sheffield United will go into the first knockout round, so we will take a look at the fixtures. They come 2 points behind Wolfsburg, but they actually get through quite comfortably over Sporting Braga, which I thought Braga would put up more of a competition. Sheffield United's wins, they actually beat Wolfsburg 4-1 at home. That is an incredibly impressive result. 2 wins over Legia Warsaw and a very impressive home win over Braga as well. They had a draw in Portugal and they lost 1-0 in Germany to actually finish behind Wolfsburg. But I'm still pretty impressed that they got through. So they make the knockout stages of the Europa League. Let's take a look who they're going to play in the first knockout round. Obviously, they play a side coming down from the Champions League. They will play Real Sociedad. Oh my. Okay, that is honestly a much tougher game than I expected. I think this might be the end of the road for Sheffield United. Although we notice no English sides coming down from the Champions League. So that either means they've all got through, or certain teams finished bottom of their groups and were knocked out. So moving up to the Champions League group stage to see what happened, Manchester United in Group A actually really struggled, but do get through just 2 points ahead of Nîmes. And Gladbach actually win the group with 2 wins over Benfica, a win at home against Man United and a win at home against Nîmes. And actually Nîmes beat Gladbach 3-0. That is a very odd amount of results. Man United had 3 draws. Who'd they lose to? They lost to Gladbach. It, again, sort of the same thing as Spurs. It's not convincing, but they're through. They will have to play a group winner, though, which does make it a little bit tougher. Chelsea, though, speaking of group winners, Chelsea do win their group. A couple of draws in there, both with Real Madrid, actually. But fortunately, Real Madrid had a draw with Galatasaray thrown in there. So Chelsea do top the group by 2 points. I was actually right about the Inter Milan-Liverpool group. I got the 3rd, 4th wrong, but Liverpool do indeed come second. And that's despite having a better goal difference and same points as Inter Milan, because it's done by results against that team. And Inter Milan had a 2-0 win over Liverpool, and Liverpool's win was only 2-1. So, yeah, That must have come down to Inter winning by a bigger margin or by winning on aggregate. So that is ridiculously close, but Liverpool still through. But again, they have to play a group winner as well. Going to the bottom group, Manchester City actually go 6 for 6, which I didn't think they would do. Yeah, that includes a 5-0 home win over Young Boys, a 4-0 away win at Dortmund. It was very, very dominant for Manchester City. Dortmund do indeed head through with them. And there were no draws. In fact, it was actually a pretty simple group to figure out in the end, really. Teams just beat the same teams over again. It's one of the most uniform groups I've seen. But let's take a look then at the last 16 stage. We know that 2 sides are playing group winners and 2 are playing group runners-up. Manchester United are the first draw. They take on Inter Milan, who were in Liverpool's group. So we'll see how they get on. Man City could have definitely got an easier game than Real Madrid. Oh my goodness me. Okay, Man City Real Madrid's going to be a very fun game. Liverpool actually get Borussia Mönchengladbach, who of course were in Manchester United's group. So Liverpool can probably be quite happy with that, really. And then Chelsea will take on Atalanta. Again, I think Chelsea will be relatively happy with that draw. I think we'll probably see Chelsea, Liverpool, Man City go through. I think Man United might go out to Inter Milan. So I'm putting a lot of faith in Inter. Returning to the Premier League, and actually something I forgot to check in the November stop-off was the managerial changes, because there was a sacking just prior to November. Steven Gerrard being sacked by Norwich. Obviously had a pretty good season with them last year, getting them up towards the top half. Bad start this year, though. He's removed by the end of October, and Andrea Pirlo returns to the Premier League. For the first time in a few seasons, he was Wolves manager right at the beginning of the save, got sacked, went on to Hellas Verona for 5 years, but has now decided it is the time to return to the Premier League with Norwich. So we'll see how he gets on. Maybe Norwich can stay up again. There's actually been a couple sackings in December. But before that, we find the joke artist, Roberto De Zerbi, has been sacked again. This time by Burnley. He has had, honestly, the weirdest 3 to 4 year span I think I've ever seen. He is wanted again, and one of those sides is Everton. Please no. But Burnley sacking him, they have hired, and this is a very interesting one, Gini Wijnaldum is a Premier League manager at Burnley. Does play 4-4-2 and a counter-attack style, so I feel like that fits pretty well, though he is a passing style, so I'm not sure how Burnley's fans are going to take to that. Spent 1 season managing VVV Venlo in Holland after finishing his career at OGC Nice. He's a very, very inexperienced manager, but Burnley giving him a shot. And as mentioned, we've seen 2 sackings in December. Their replacements have not been announced yet. They currently have caretaker bosses. It is Everton and Leeds. Gareth Southgate lasting all of about 6 months in charge. And then Veselinovic at Leeds lasting about a year, I think. So neither getting very much time there to do anything. But let's have a look. Why were they sacked? Well, that's a pretty good explanation right there. Everton are 18th, Leeds are 19th, and in big trouble with only 12 points on the season alongside Bournemouth. They seem to be the 2 sides in big trouble right now. The 3 newly promoted sides are actually just chilling right now. Reading, Palace, and Wolves. Wolves all the way up in 9th, though they are 6 points behind Sheffield United, and Sheffield United have a game in hand. So we've sort of got a top 8 this season, where we've got the customary sort of big 6, and then Newcastle and Sheffield United. So that's our top 8, and then there's a gap, and then we've got Wolves, down to Villa, and then there is actually a little gap between Villa and West Ham. But Leeds and Bournemouth definitely in trouble. We look to the top of the table. It's Chelsea taking control. They are 2 points clear of Manchester City and have a game in hand to go 5 clear. So that is interesting to see Chelsea jumping Man City here. They are way clear, by the way. But they are clear of Arsenal. So Jurgen Klopp, what a turnaround after a terrible first 3 games of the season. To have Arsenal up in 3rd, they're competing with Liverpool, Man United, well, as mentioned, Spurs, Newcastle, and down to Sheffield United, really. If we have a very, very quick look at player stats at the side, Lukaku's still topping the goal-scoring charts, but only 1 ahead of Sheffield United's Martin Satriano. Erling Haaland getting up there as well on 11. Solberg has only sort of provided 1 more assist, and Ødegaard's actually caught him up. So a Norwegian battle at the top of the assist charts. Ederson and Ramsdale. So Ramsdale having a better season, tied there for clean sheets. But what we're going to do now, we are going to head to the beginning of February to get through the January transfer window. We'll see who Everton and Leeds decide to hire as their managers. Is De Zerbi going to get relegated yet again if he takes the Everton job? We'll see in a month's time. But we'll also go through the January transfer window and see which teams make what moves. Picking the save up on the 3rd of February, just over a month later. And starting with the managers, as we take a look at who Leeds and Everton have hired. It was actually Leeds who made the first move on the 7th of January to hire Paco James, who was the Lyon manager in save. Has kind of bounced around quite a few teams, actually. Started with Ibiza. Ibiza? I never know how to say Ibiza. Never been there. Just was on a party, apparently. Went to Saint-Étienne and Spezia, Reims, Lens. He's moved around a lot, but he makes his first appearance here in the Premier League with Leeds. It's going to be a hell of a task to try and keep them up, the position they were in at the beginning of 2030. Everton then made their move 4 days later, and they bring in a man who is familiar with the Premier League. Gabriel Heinze, formerly of Manchester United, former United defender, comes to the Premier League for the first time as a manager with Everton. He'll try and keep them up, see what he can do. He comes in from Empoli. Quite a change there. But, and this is a big one, Manchester United, literally on the day of the last stop-off point, so mere hours after we moved on, sacked Zinedine Zidane for poor league position. They want Champions League football every year. They've made that their thing. It was looking questionable. They were certainly in the chase, but they decide that Zidane is done. He had been there for a good 6.5 seasons, possibly 7 years. But no titles, not many trophies to speak of. I think they won a Europa League, and that's about it. Currently, they are going with an interim manager till the end of the season. It seems that they are giving the job to Nick Cox for now, the head of youth development. Interesting choice. We'll see how he gets on for the second half of the season. Could he get the job permanently? That would be a very interesting situation. Now let's take a look then at transfers, actually. We'll do transfers first before we look at the table. We are only about 4 or 5 games further on. The biggest move of the window in January is Abel Ruiz, a player that we have seen a few times in the goal-scoring charts for Brighton. Actually netted 99 league goals for Brighton. Had 14 in his last Premier League season. Obviously, Brighton in the Championship this year. Well, they pick up £64 million from Arsenal for a 30-year-old striker, has literally just turned 30. Arsenal, and he's going to be rotation. Very interesting move from Arsenal there. Let's hope Abel Ruiz can break in and at least get a few goals, else that's going to be a very silly transfer. And they've actually made another really big move, almost 50 million on Andrea Papetti, a centre-back coming in from Torino. That move makes more sense, though he is also just seen as a depth player. But he is only 27, so he's definitely got a few seasons to grow a little bit more. Has been playing reasonably well for Torino as well, actually pretty darn well. Some interesting moves from Arsenal there that I'm not 100% backing, but we'll see how it gets on. They were in third, and Jurgen was doing well, so I'll trust the process, I guess. We see Alexis Salamakas actually leaving the Premier League as he heads off to Barcelona. We get Jens Peter Haug is leaving the league. He is off to Juve. Obviously, we mentioned weren't in the Champions League, so actually I'm interested. Because they finished 8th and missed Europe entirely by the looks of it. Now managed by Xavi. That's a very interesting situation that's gone down there. Obviously, they're trying to avoid that. I think it said they were 3rd. We see Jason Sanchez, who was he was a new gen fullback. Villa cashing in on him as he heads to Bayern Munich. £42 million. Never actually really played that well or that often. This was his first season of playing pretty much every game. And he was okay. But they get some pretty good money from Bayern for him. That could rise up to 50 million, so that's a pretty good move for Villa. Though, now that I think about it, Villa have very much become a selling club that seem happy to just sort of sit mid-table. And I'd like to see Villa try and make a move to try and break into European football. We see Barca actually being pretty busy on some slightly older players. We see Sailormakers going there. We also see Takahiro Tomiyasu, who is now 31. He's heading off to Barcelona as well. So that's where some of Arsenal's money has come from. We go right to the bottom. We actually see Ed Hewison, the man that scored the Community Shield winning goal, is heading off to Fulham for potentially 30 million. So that's a nice sum of money for Manchester City on a guy that wasn't really playing. We find Liverpool's biggest move of the January window is Elche centre-back Jose Carlos Montoya, who is 23, as mentioned, a new gen. Some pretty decent stats, but yeah, I think he's very much going to be a rotation player. Though he has actually appeared in 3 games since he arrived, 2 starts in there as well, without really being all that impressive. That's good to see, again, more new gen players arriving in the league. We have Crystal Palace turning to Brentford, bringing in Elias Machuca, Argentinian centre-back. Team's not too worried about height, going with 6-foot centre-backs. But he is viewed as important. Does look like a reasonably good centre-back. Just try and keep Palace in the league for this season. It's going pretty well so far for them, to be fair. There's the Dean Green transfer, by the way. We find Carlos Robbins, a new-gen central midfielder, will be leaving, or has left Arsenal. He has headed off to Gladbach in Germany. So the English players heading to the Bundesliga thing, still very much a thing. We actually have to go quite a bit further down to find Manchester United selling Ezri Konsa. And they get 11.5 million, as well as Geronimo Portao. So in regards to the player exchange, this is Geronimo Portao. It is a goalkeeper, but he is just viewed as a backup. So now trying to make sense of the goalkeeper position here. Providel is actually retiring at the end of the season. They seem to have moved their younger keepers down. The Carpentier has actually gone out on loan to Fulham for this season. Okay. So he's headed out to the Championship. Alfie Whiteman is the other backup goalkeeper, the former Spurs youth keeper. So a very interesting situation going on here, all based on the sale of Andre Onana at the beginning of the year. They have some keepers, but they're certainly not standouts. I actually find Nicholas Dyer, he was a player that was part of a player exchange at one point. he's heading off to the Turkish leagues as Villa selling another player. And Jamie Donnelly being sold by Everton, he's off to the Bundesliga as well. He's off to Dortmund. So we've seen a couple of British players heading off to Germany, which is just becoming a thing. Spurs spending 10 million on Flamengo centre-back Nelio. New Gen, once again, has some decent stats. Is not particularly well-rounded, but he's good. He's good at what he needs to be good at. I don't know if a whole lot has really gone down in this January window. We find Pablo Maffeo heading to Villa, so Villa are actually buying players as well. And Bournemouth turning to PSG to bring in Felix Agu, now 30 years of age, the German fullback. Bournemouth trying to keep themselves in the league to get a third season, this being their second. But I think we're now under the 10 million mark, so let's take a look at the Premier League table. As mentioned, we are sort of 3 or 4 games further, or 4 or 5 games further on. And Chelsea are top, but it is just a 4-point gap. And now Manchester City are the side with a game in hand. It is very much back and forth between Chelsea and Manchester City. Nobody is even close to them. But then we find Liverpool, Man United, Spurs, Newcastle and Arsenal all within 2 points of each other. And Newcastle and Spurs, actually Newcastle, Spurs and Liverpool all have games in hand over United and Arsenal. Sheffield United also have a game in hand to try and get into 7th, though they would need a bit of a goal difference swing as well. If we look to the bottom of the table, it is extremely close. We haven't really had a season like this where there's no standout side that look like they're going down. But Leeds are bottom, but they're only 2 points from safety. And all the way up to Reading in 14th is looking pretty dangerous. So we could well have about a 7-team battle for relegation here. This could be one of the most entertaining ends to a season that we've had in this save. Now, outside of that, next port of call is going to be the beginning of April, where we'll go back through the European knockouts and we'll see how those are going down to the quarter-final stage. And we'll also get another look at the Premier League table and team and player stats and see how it's looking then, because it is currently looking like it could be ridiculously close. We pick the season back up on the 1st of April, and with that, we're going to go back through the European competitions again. I'm going to see how Premier League sides are getting on. We start with the Europa Conference League, where Leicester won their group, so came in at the last 16 stage. However, it's also where their competition ends. They are defeated 4-3 by Vitória de Guimarães, a side that we saw playing Champions League football last season. So we knew they were pretty decent, but they prove it against Premier League opposition. They head through to take on Bayer Leverkusen in the quarterfinals. I will try and remember to take a look at who wins the competition this year, but that is the end for English interest. Moving up to the Europa League, and English interest very much still remains in the competition. Sheffield United, who came second in their group, came in at the first knockout round and had to take on Real Sociedad. And very surprisingly, to be honest, they actually come through that tie on penalties after a 1-1 draw. And they then take on Sporting Lisbon in the last 16. And they come through that as well to make the quarterfinals. Though it's not drawn out very well for the Premier League sides, because Spurs came in at the last 16. They had a tricky game actually as well against Porto. They come through that 2-1, and now they faced Sheffield United in the quarterfinals. Of course, it does mean that an English side will be represented in the semi-finals, but it does mean that one of them will also have to go out at this stage, which is unfortunate. And then the Champions League, we just have the last 16 round to talk about. And it's gone very, very well for the Premier League sides. Manchester United actually coming through against Inter 4-1 on aggregate, which is way better than I expected. Obviously, I thought that Inter would get through. But we do get a Manchester derby in the quarterfinals because Manchester City routed Real Madrid 5-0 in the last 16. City versus United, making for a fun tie. Liverpool certainly didn't rout their way through. A 3-2 triumph over Borussia Mönchengladbach. Could they actually be a German powerhouse now? I don't know, but they've proved to be pretty strong opposition this year anyway. But Liverpool do get through. They'll take on AS Monaco in the quarterfinals. And then Chelsea get through as well. They see off Atalanta 6-2, and they will play Barcelona in the quarterfinals. Obviously, Chelsea, the defending champions. There's still a chance of a Chelsea-Manchester City final once again. The Carabao Cup has also finished as well, and we actually got a Leicester-Arsenal final, which I believe is a repeat of last season's final, and the same thing happens again as Leicester retain the League Cup. Goals from James Maddison and Patson Daka mean Leicester get a second consecutive season with silverware, and they'll have Europa Conference League football next season, despite being knocked out in the last 16 stage of it this year. But we do now get back to the Premier League. There have been a couple more sackings since the February stop-off point. Graham Potter, who I actually mentioned, he'd been at West Ham for a little while. Yeah, he had been. He's now been sacked. He is actually wanted by Brighton because West Ham hired Roberto Martinez, who was the Brighton manager. So Graham Potter could make a return to Brighton, and we may well see Brighton again soon. I don't know. I haven't checked the Championship table. We could see a Graham Potter-led Brighton return to the Premier League. But for now, we focus on West Ham. Roberto Martinez, the new man in charge there, as he tries to keep them as a Premier League club. The other one is a very recent sacking. Roberto Mancini gone from Tottenham. Currently, they have Dean Rastrick as the caretaker boss. Don't know if Spurs will hire a new manager before the end of the season. He may well turn interim, as Nick Cox is doing with Manchester United. But the main thing now is to look at how the Premier League table is standing. Because if West Ham have had poor results and Spurs have had poor results, it may well have changed around a little bit. And that's why West Ham are actually now bottom of the Premier League with 8 games to go. That I did not expect. But it has happened. And again, this relegation battle, this could really be something impressive. Because you've got West Ham just 3 points adrift, and they're bottom. And they're only 3 points adrift to Bournemouth, so even if Reading won their game in hand. You've got Leeds in the bottom 3, they've got a game in hand to get out. And Everton, imagine a relegation zone of Everton, Leeds and West Ham. If all 3 of those go down, that's going to make for a hell of an exodus of players out those squads. If we look to the top of the league, though, it's Manchester City and Chelsea dueling it out, though Man City are now the team in control. It's only by a point, but they have a superior goal difference as well, which is helping them. With 9 games to go, that could be a heck of an ending to the season. We know that Leicester have actually nabbed the EC2 spot, so 7th is not necessarily going to be enough for Europe now. Sheffield United have jumped up into 6th. Actually, what a run from Newcastle. They are up into the Champions League places. They're a point ahead of Liverpool. So Liverpool have slipped up big time. Man United, kind of in their own little world. They've started to pull away from Newcastle and Liverpool. And a game in hand as well, to really pull away. And then that 6th spot has got quite a few teams battling for it. Sheffield United, Arsenal, Villa, Spurs, Leicester are even in there as well. So Leicester don't really need it after their League Cup triumph. We take, I was going to say we take a quick look, but no, we're going to dive into it, aren't we? We're in April. So if we look for, just very quickly, a couple of the team stats, just with goals, Manchester City with 72, Chelsea with 67. They are just ginormously ahead of everybody else. West Ham least goals with just 25. We knew that they started the season very solid defensively. Goals has been their big problem. We'll see if they're still as strong defensively as they were at the start. Goals is their issue. Everton down there and Leeds down there as well. Makes sense to be making up the bottom three then. As we look to conceded, we see that West Ham have conceded 42, which is actually middle of the pack. They just aren't scoring at all. It's Man City conceding just 23 goals, Chelsea at 29, and then Arsenal and Newcastle actually on 30. Newcastle have made a heck of a run just in the second half of this season in general. They might push for Champions League football. It could happen. We shift over to the individual stats, and we actually see that Martin Satriano has a 3-goal lead at the top of the Golden Boot charts. Honestly, it would be great if Satriano won a Golden Boot. He got 20 goals in each of the last 2 seasons. He's reached 20 already with around 8 or 9 games of the season left. And he's 3 ahead of Erling Haaland and Romelu Lukaku. Sesko is making a bit of a run though. He is up to 16 goals. So Sesko is going for 3 straight. Lukaku's trying to win his 3rd or 4th Golden Boot of the save. Haaland, I think, has only won 1. And I think it's either Haaland or Mbappe who have won 1, and then the other one hasn't won 1 at all. But if you put your money on Martin Satriano to win 1 at the start of the save, you're lying. We actually see Ben Brereton Diaz is up here in double figures for Reading alongside Neil Maupay, which is why Reading are having a reasonably decent first season back. But you can see Man City sharing the goals out. You've got Haaland 17, Sesko 16, Delap and Foden on 12 each, and then Chelsea sharing it with Lukaku on 17, and then Vinicius and Mbappe on 13 each. So you kind of got 3 or 4 players in each of those teams hitting pretty high tallies. I just see Brenner topping XG. He's only scored 10, but he's got 17 XG. He could be doing a heck of a lot better. We turn to assists, though. We actually find Phil Foden topping that one. Foden might be player of the year. He is looking spectacular, though he is in his prime now at 29 years of age. He is just ahead of Odegaard, Havertz and Mbappe for assists. And it's then quite a few guys, actually, but including Shola Shortire and Hugo Felix. So some interesting names in there. Key passes is led by Kylian Mbappe. And then a few names, Tommy Doyle, Jared Bowen, and Yassine Adli up here again. So good to see some English players in Doyle and Bowen. The names that make the Niles up here. Smith Rowe's dropped off a bit. We can look at chances created as well, which is also led by Kylian Mbappe. And then Richarlison. Of course, Everton in the bottom 3. Richarlison's been here the whole time, and he's not really done a whole lot. I mean, how has he been getting on? He's had double-digit seasons almost every single year. In fact, the last 5 seasons he's hit double digits. He's got 6 this year so far. He's actually turned more chance creator than anything else, but only picked up 1 assist. See, Dominik Szoboszlai, a player that we haven't mentioned for a few seasons either, he is up there in that stat. See, dribbles made led by Trent Alexander-Arnold. Volpato is still there as well. And Mbappe. Mbappe's getting a lot of the ball. It's just further back than he's used to being. I think he might be a winger or a wide midfielder in this. We'll get to defensive statistics. Tackles one actually led by Sergio Carrera, and there's Kylian Mbappe again. West Ham actually have 3 of the top 4, and they are still bottom of the league, so it's not well, it is on their defence. No, it's not on their defence. They've only conceded like middle of the pack, haven't they? It is all very, very much a lack of goal scoring for West Ham that is causing them their problems. If they can find someone to just step up and net a few in this last 8 games, West Ham will be okay. They're certainly not out of it. If we look to key tackles, we see Abdou Diallo topping that one. I do find this when you get a decent bit into a save. There are a lot of players in their sort of early to mid-30s because the game still sees them as the best players and it doesn't go after the world-class wonder kids, except for, to be fair, Matsumoto was a very good signing. I'll give it that one. There are a lot of players in their early to mid-30s. You see Roger Ibanez is leading key headers. A Bournemouth player in Dimitris Nicolaou leading clearances. And then Owen Wijndal, the most fouls this season. We'll finish off the stats section with the goalkeepers as normal. Ederson has conceded just 21 goals. Trubin and Onana level at 27. Ramsdale on 30. Clean sheets is led by Ederson on 13. He is only 1 ahead of Trubin, though. We know Trubin in his first Premier League season, so he's taken to it pretty well. Then David Raya actually on 9 for Aston Villa, which is quite impressive, alongside Aaron Ramsdale. And finally, XG prevented, we see Ederson topping that stat on 6.2, Alexander Nubel there, and then Seny Dieng for Wolves. The ex-QPR goalkeeper, yeah. Spent quite a long time at Rangers. He's only played 6 times, but when he's played well. We've got Safanov up here, and Nana's there. Samuel Brolin, is he the regular goalkeeper? No, he's played just 4 times. New signing, actually. Just came in from AIK. We'll see if West Ham can stay up. He's gone in goal again. Malero Bogard has ended up in goal again at some point. How does this keep happening? And Nathan Collins has been in goal. What is happening at Burnley? Are you actually a keeper? You are. Okay, but you've also only played 4 times. What is happening at Burnley? I need an explanation. Who is their goalkeeper? Well, actually, it's Joel Drommel, isn't it? He's been here a couple seasons. This man apparently just can't stay in goal. He's had no yellows, no reds. What's this man's injury history? He's only had 1 injury this season. He damaged his heel against Bournemouth. But then, does that mean that Burnley changed outfield player in goal? And they went from one of these to the other? I'm baffled. I'm very confused as to what is happening in goal at Burnley. But Bogart's been in at least twice now, and Nathan Collins has also been in goal. I am lost as to what's happening there. But the next plan of action is to get to the final day of the Premier League season. There could be an awful lot to play for and a lot to figure out, so may have to take some time with it. Here we are now on the final day of the Premier League season. It's actually a little bit later than we've seen in the past few seasons. It's actually the 26th of May. Spurs, unsurprisingly, as I kind of predicted they would, they actually make Dean Rastrick the interim manager. They will hire a new manager at the end of this season, as well as Manchester United. They will bring in a new manager. So that's going to be a very interesting point to start off the next video when we do the 2030-31 season. But what we really want to look at, How is the Premier League table looking going into the final game? Well, okay, there's still bits to play for. It's maybe not quite as much as I thought, but there's a little bit. Man City have actually won the title already. They are 6 points clear of Chelsea. That is done. Champions League spots are actually done as well. Liverpool recover up to 4th. They're 7 points clear of Newcastle and Arsenal. So it's Man United finishing 3rd, Chelsea finishing 2nd, and Liverpool have finished 4th. So all that is done. Congratulations, Man City, on your 3rd straight Premier League title. Vincent Kompany's 3rd Premier League title as a manager. What a career he's had, hey? But if we look to Europe next, there's a little bit to play for, because Leicester could actually make Europa League instead of EC2, which would then open up 7th again. Because Newcastle and Arsenal are just 1 point ahead. Newcastle actually play Sheffield United. Sheffield United could technically still get 6th. They would need a lot to go their way, though. They would have to win that game and have Arsenal lose to Reading, who are in... The relegation battle is insane. I'll get to that in a moment. That is ridiculous. But Europe-wise, it's Newcastle, Arsenal, Leicester, a very outside shot for Sheffield United. They need a lot to go their way. Leicester, by the way, will be away at Manchester United. Leicester are kind of in the nicest position. They've already got European football with the League Cup win. It's on Newcastle and Arsenal at this point, but I think they will be the two that take 5th and 6th. We then see the likes of Villa, Spurs, Wolves, well done to them in their first season back in the top flight. They stay up quite comfortably. And Southampton, who got off to a very good start, slowed down a bit. They're 12th, but they are quite happily safe. And then we get to the relegation battle. Firstly, West Ham are gone. So Roberto Martinez moves from Brighton to West Ham. It doesn't work out. West Ham are relegated for the 2nd time in this save. But then there are, about 8 teams? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are 7 teams who could all still be relegated by the end of the day. That is absolutely unbelievable. I mean, some are more likely than others. Bournemouth look like they're down. Then again, they do play Norwich. Bournemouth have to win. Simple as. Bournemouth have got to win. Where it gets more complicated is the 18th spot. Currently, it's Burnley. Burnley play Aston Villa, who have nothing to play for. Burnley have to get a result. Simple as. A draw doesn't really do Burnley that much either, because even if they draw, Palace would have to lose by a lot to Southampton, who again, a side who have absolutely nothing to play for. You see, this is the thing. I could end up going through a load of situations and scenarios here, but if Burnley and Bournemouth lose, that's it. They are down. The next team, the first safe team currently is Crystal Palace. As mentioned, they play Southampton. They don't necessarily need a result, but if Burnley get a point... if Burnley get a point, then Palace are actually still alright, because again, as mentioned, they'd have to lose by a lot. But if Burnley win, then that drags in an awful lot of teams. That could drag in Reading, should results not go their way. Reading host Arsenal. Did I mention that? I might not have actually. But Reading host Arsenal, so that's a pretty tricky game. Leeds have a good goal difference, which is really helping them. They are away at Wolves. And again, Wolves have nothing to play for. So definitely a winnable game there for Leeds. Technically, Everton and Norwich are not safe. But realistically, I think they'll be okay because an awful lot has to go against them to drag them in. Everton head to West Ham, who are already down. Norwich host Bournemouth, as we've mentioned, and Bournemouth have to win. And Bournemouth actually can't catch Norwich at all. So I think Norwich and Everton are probably safe. I think Leeds are safe. Burnley realistically have to win. And Villa is a winnable game. But then that only really drags in, I would say, Palace and Reading. So if I'm going to make a prediction, I'm going to stick with how it is. I think Bournemouth and Burnley are going to go down. I think Burnley's goal difference is going to be the thing that really stings them, because even a point at Villa just isn't good enough for them. So I think after all that, where I said 7 teams could go down, I think it's probably going to be Burnley and Bournemouth who are in there already. But let's jump forward another week, actually, to finish off every competition, and then we'll take a look at all the European competitions, we'll take a look at the FA Cup, and then finally round it out with the Premier League table and statistics. We picked the save up just a week later, now that every competition regarding English sides is done. We've had the FA Cup final, we've had the European finals, and the Premier League season is now done as well. I did say I would take a very brief look at the Europa Conference League. Leicester, obviously, as mentioned, were knocked out in the last 16, but there was still British representation in Celtic. However, they went out in the quarterfinals to RB Salzburg. But it is congratulations to Roma, who end up winning the Europa Conference League under Mark van Bommel. They get a 2-1 win over OGC Nice. It's now Europa League time, and last time we saw it, we knew that Sheffield United and Spurs would be playing each other in the quarterfinals, and it was actually Sheffield United who came out on top with a 4-2 aggregate win, and they made the Europa League final, beating Galatasaray 3-2 in the semi-finals. However, they fall agonisingly short of potential Champions League football and a European crown. They lose 1-0 to RB Leipzig. We'll take a look at the game. We'll see if Sheffield United were maybe a little bit FM. No. RB Leipzig scored in the first minute, a goal from Marcus Leonardo. They just saw the game out from there, controlled it relatively, and unfortunately, Sheffield United fall so close, but yet so far. And finally, the Champions League, and I spoke it into existence. We got yet another Manchester City versus Chelsea Champions League final, and this time it's Manchester City taking the crown. They win the Premier League and the Champions League. They also won the Community Shield. We haven't looked at the FA Cup yet. They might have done a quadruple. We'll find out in a moment. Man City actually had to go to penalties with Manchester United. They come through that one though. They then take on Liverpool in the semi-finals. What a very Premier League based path that was. Sneak past Liverpool 2-1 and then a 2-0 win in the final over Chelsea, who actually got there quite easily. They beat Barcelona 4-1, Bayern Munich 7-2 in the semi-finals, which is incredibly impressive. But they can't do what they've done a lot in this save, which is beat Man City in the Champions League final. We will have a look again at goal scorers. Sesko actually finishes top scorer in the Champions League. But it was actually goals from Liam Delap and Welsh 21-year-old striker Gethin Williams, who is a member of the under-23s. This kid came off the bench in the Champions League final, potentially his first ever Champions League game, and he scored. That is the stuff of dreams. Yeah, that was his first senior goal. Wow. What a moment for Gethin Williams. Will we ever see that name again in this save? I don't know. But Man City only had 2 shots on target. They both went in. Trubin plays a 6.2. Matsumoto a 6. He's actually playing centre-back, which is quite interesting. But Manchester City take the Champions League. Let's find out if they've done a quadruple. And the answer to that question is yes, they absolutely have done the quadruple. Manchester City, the Community Shield, the FA Cup, the Premier League, and the Champions League all in one season. It is a dominant 3-0 win over Arsenal. I say dominant, actually. Arsenal had an XG of 1.83 and didn't score. More possession, less shots, but obviously much better chances that they just did not take. There was goals from Benjamin Sesko, Jeremy Pino, and Federico Chiesa. They had the game done by the very beginning of the second half. I'm assuming these chances probably came later in the game. Also, Mason Mount playing CDM by the end is a very interesting choice. See, Leclerc playing, Bjekovic is a new gen fullback. Ramsdale only getting a 6.2, so keepers in finals against Manchester City really didn't have the best of times. We'll see Man City's ratings. Playing a 4-4-2. Yes, Vincent Kompany, I knew I liked you. Pedro Felipe, we've got Franco at left back. Ederson playing an 8.5. What a performance from him. Man City, quadruple winners. And to cap it off, we return to the Premier League. We already knew about the Champions League spots, but Europe actually got interesting. Newcastle did indeed win, so they did what they had to do. But, oh, by the way, Liverpool actually beat Manchester City, which meant Man City's lowest points tally in 3 seasons. Just the 96. Chelsea also lost, actually. They lost to Spurs. Spurs finishing down in 9th. No European football for Spurs next season. Just as they were getting used to it, eh? But, distractions. Anyway, Newcastle pull out a 2-1 win over Sheffield United, which means they do grab 5th. But Leicester get 6th because Leicester beat Manchester United 1-0, which actually means the top 3 all lost on the final day of the season, which is quite interesting. But Leicester win, and Arsenal only drew at Reading. So Leicester leap into 6th and steal the Europa League spot, and Arsenal will play Europa Conference League next year. And unfortunately for Sheffield United, they won't play European football at all next season, despite making the Europa League final in their first attempt. That is gutting, to be honest. So close, but yet so far away from Champions League football, and now they get none at all. But the battle at the bottom, I couldn't get that into a sentence. Crystal Palace have actually gone down because Burnley have saved themselves with a 3-2 win at Aston Villa. Bournemouth, I think, actually won as well. They did. Bournemouth beat Norwich 1-0, but it's not enough because of Burnley's win at Villa. And with all of that, Palace lose 2-0 away at Southampton, and they are straight away relegated back down. Bournemouth gone in their 2nd season, so 2nd season syndrome strikes there. But Burnley, with the rescue act on the final day, Gini Wijnaldum finds a way. Reading staying up as well. As mentioned, they got that draw with Arsenal, which cost Arsenal Europa League football. Knights of Everton and Leeds staying up as well. Everton getting a point at West Ham. I think Leeds might have won, actually. Yeah, they did. Leeds won 2-0 at Wolves, so they stay up as well. But let's finish off this season with a quick glance into the stats. Man City bagging 95 goals on the season ahead of Chelsea's 87. it's just remarkable how far clear they are of everyone else. We look to the bottom of the charts, West Ham. I said that this was their problem, just 32 goals on the season. I did say that if they could find a way to score some more goals at the back end of the season, they would stay up. They didn't find that way, and they ended up relegated quite convincingly in the end. We'll see if West Ham are able to do what they did last time they went down, and bounce straight back. We looked conceded, Manchester City, 35 conceded. So I think there certainly were more goals this season, because that feels quite high. Newcastle were actually second with just 40 conceded, so well done to them. You see West Ham 13th in conceded, which would not suggest coming last. But Burnley actually conceded 72 goals and stayed up. So well done, Genuine Album. Somehow you pulled that off. Moving on into the individual player statistics, and it is a golden boot for Erling Haaland with 24 goals on the season. Romelu Lukaku in second with 22. And unfortunately, actually, Martin Satriano falls off. Net's just one in the last, 8 or 9 games of the season. Though I think he only played in about 5 of them. So I think he's also missed a little bit of time. Sesko still nets 20 on the season. I think he's gone down by 5 each season. He got 30 in his debut campaign, 25 last year, which also won him the Golden Boot. Just the 20 this year for Sesko, which has him in 4th. So he's still going at a heck of a rate, but no Golden Boot this time. Mbappe there on 18. We see Moise Kean. Liam Delap netting 15 in just 9 starts and 19 sub-appearances, which is ridiculously good. I'd be interested to see if any sort of mid-table sides decide to make a bid for Liam Delap and actually give him regular playing time. You see Daryl Dike up here. Jarosend is still at Wolves, and he bags 13 as Wolves stay up. Brenner topped XG at 20.6, 13 goals on the season. It's not too bad. Daniel Jefferson's become Canadian, which is quite interesting. He gets 11, which is a bit of a drop-off for him. We actually see Mohamed Ali Cho scoring 11 for Crystal Palace. Obviously, they went down. Not a player I'm familiar with at all. Came in from Cagliari came in from AC Milan on a free. Nets 11, gets relegated. We'll see if anyone makes a move for him. We turn to assists. Topping that chart is actually Kai Havertz in the end, as he gets 16 assists on the season. Odegaard just in behind with 14. James Maddison arriving on the scene towards the end of the season as he gets 12 with Phil Foden there as well. He dropped off a little bit actually. Foden had a good lead, but doesn't end up winning the top assists. Jared Bowen ends up with the most key passes in the league, just ahead of Kylian Mbappe and Tommy Doyle. Elias Solberg hung around there as well. Chances created is topped by quite a long way actually by Kylian Mbappe. Richarlison in there on 19 with Ruben Neves on 18. See crosses attempted, Kyle Walker-Peters. Dribbles made, Trent Alexander-Arnold. And 2 players were the most fouled players. They were Brenner and Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Defensively, we see 2 West Ham players topping tackles 1. We won't be seeing West Ham next season, unfortunately, after their relegation. We find interceptions led by a Reading player in Gruskowski. Key headers, actually 3 players in Ibanez, Vestergaard and Lacroix. A 37-year-old Yannick Vestergaard playing 34 times in the Premier League. Okay then. James Justin here again. He's leading blocks. Trent Alexander-Arnold with the most fouls. There you go. Anyone who says that Alexander-Arnold can't defend, you've now got an extra thing to back your false statement. We find conceded is led by, actually, Ivan Provedel, though he did only play 23 times. Ederson really leads that statistic, with 33 conceded in 36. And then Andre Onana has actually been a really good step up for Newcastle. he has played a lot better than I expected, or he's made a bigger difference than I expected, rather. I thought Sake was a pretty good keeper, and Arna just that step up, giving them something else. They don't quite break into Champions League football, but 5th, still a pretty good effort, gets them at least back into Europe. Clean sheets is topped just by Edison as he gets 15, ahead of Trubin on 14, and then Onana and Juan Musso actually getting 11 for Leicester. So Leicester really did end the season very well, end up picking up 6th. They will play Europa League next year, and they also won the League Cup, so pretty good on that front. And finally, we're going to end off with XG prevented. Pretty close battle, actually, between Alisson and Alexander Nubel by the end of the season, as they are in the 4s. 2 Wolves goalkeepers in Etienne Green and Seny Dieng up there in the 3s. And Chris Mepham's been in goal. Okay, interesting situation there. Chelsea have had a youngster in goal, 22-year-old Chris Lavery playing 4 times. Yeah, we did actually see him last season as well. He's picked up a few clean sheets when he has played, which is quite good. Still got Nathan Collins and Bogard in there, which is still very strange. It's a very interesting statistic, this one. Alfie Whiteman actually turned it around quite a lot. He had a better end to the season. And Alfie Whiteman's actually the first choice keeper at Manchester United. Ended up playing 12 times, conceded just 10, 4 clean sheets. Actually played really well. They did actually buy him this window as well from Tottenham. Or sorry, this season from Spurs. Could Alfie Whiteman be the long-term solution? I feel like he's not going to be the long-term solution. Interesting new-gen goalkeeper, actually, for Crystal Palace. Only seen as an emergency backup, and he's actually under bid right now from Stoke and AFC Wimbledon. So Palace go down. We wouldn't have seen him anyway, but looks like he's moving on to become more of a starting goalkeeper. But that is how the 2029-2030 season finishes. Manchester City completely dominant, a quadruple from them. Chelsea still chasing. They look like they had a chance at one point. They look like they could take it to the end. They fall just a little bit short overall. Leicester win a League Cup and get Europa League football with a 6th place finish. So pretty impressive from them. Sheffield United, so close to a Europa League triumph, falling to RB Leipzig in the final. And we say goodbye to Bournemouth, Crystal Palace and West Ham. We'll find out who the 3 promoted sides will be at the start of next video. We'll also find out who's going to be in charge of Manchester United and Tottenham, as they are seeking managers at the moment. If you have enjoyed the video, it's been a long one. Thank you for sticking in there with it. If you have enjoyed it, like, subscribe, comment, share, anything along those lines to help get these videos out there. Next one will be coming up soon, which will be the 2030-2031 season. See if Manchester City's dominance continues, and we'll hopefully see you in that one.